Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer. And if you are a first-time listener, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. On this show, my aim with my guests is to always educate, empower, entertain you a bit, and inspire you to live a fearlessly authentic life. Because in my opinion, what else are we doing here if we're not living fearlessly authentic? And it changes all the time. But with my guests, we talk about maybe obstacles they've overcome to reach their goals or have created a service or a product that helps other people become fearlessly authentic, overcome their obstacles. So I'm very excited about today's guest. But before we start, I wanted to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe. Leave me a message. I love to hear from you. I love to hear what you think of the show, what you'd like to hear. We are 100 countries are listening to us right now, Adam. So it's really kind of cool. And I love doing the live show, but if you don't catch it live, you can catch me any place you listen to podcasts. So thank you again. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And so I want to get right into our show today. I want to introduce Adam Lippin to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, I'm so excited because this is a topic. We're going to talk about things that are still kind of taboo. We're definitely taboo when we were growing up, even though I think we're like 10 or 15 years apart, but, grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe. And, but we're going to get really deep into it. And we're going to talk very candidly, but a little bit about Adam. Entrepreneur Adam Lippin believes deeply in the transformative power of authentic human connection. As the founder and CEO of HearMe, Adam's on a mission to make mental health support accessible, affordable, and immediate. Being a yoga and meditation practitioner for over 20 years, Adam says there's a transcendence that comes from being truly heard, seen, and validated by another human being. Being seen for who we really are as a whole person without judgment. I love that whole feeling because that is one of the reasons I named the show Fearlessly Authentic, because as you heard in the intro, I was always afraid to take risks. But so many times in my life, I wasn't heard or didn't feel heard or seen. And that makes you feel really sad. So tell us about the HearMe app. How did it start? Tell us about it.
Yeah, and when you reached out, fearlessly authentic, it was a yes, regardless of anything else, but because of the name and therefore had a sense of what you were about, even without actually meeting you first. So essentially, the concept of HearMe is that we all don't need therapy, but we all need someone to talk to. And Brene Brown talks about vulnerability being our superpower, and a problem shared is a problem halved. And one of my favorite expressions is we're not the survival of the fittest, but we're the survival of the nurtured, right? So what I wanted to do is create a space where anyone, anytime, could get something off their chest to be seen, heard, and validated with someone who can be there for them, trying to match as best possible with someone with a similar lived experience, with a real desire to be there and some real foundational training in active and reflective listening skills. So, there's a huge mental health crisis, which is getting worse. We all know about it. There's a limited supply of therapists and psychiatrists. So assuming that therapy and psychiatry was the appropriate sort of methodology for most people, and I would argue that it's not, even though if you need it, please get it. I hope it's available to you. But if you look at sort of just, at least in the States, demographically, the Black population, the BIPOC population is, a lot higher than the 2% of psychiatrists that are Black and the 4% of therapists that are Black. So what HearMe is able to do is match people from a similar, if they want to be, from a similar sort of experience, which comes from my personal experience of growing up gay, knowing that there was nothing inherently wrong with me, even if I could somehow ask my parents for therapy, that, I wouldn't have been able to. And then therapy, I just needed someone that I could talk to that was gay, that I could sort of relate to. I knew there was nothing wrong with me, but I did not have access to that. And so that caused a lot of problems, which we can get into at some point later on. But that's sort of the reason behind HearMe and what HearMe is all about.
And what I love about it is the accessibility, because it's free, right?
Yeah, so we do have an enterprise product, and we do have a consumer premium, but it's also free for anyone.
Okay. So it's free and it's immediate. And that's what I think most people need. I have a therapist. I've had a therapist for probably 20 years, off and on, depending on what's going on in my life. And, back when I started in therapy, even before I got divorced, almost 20 years ago, there was some shame. There was some embarrassment. I wasn't sharing it. I would have never gotten on a radio show and said that I had a therapist. And, it's sad that it was like that back then. So having an app that you can go to now in your own privacy immediately, because sometimes your therapist isn't available, right? You'd love to have your therapist on call all the time. And for the most part, they try to answer your questions, but it's great to have that accessibility, that immediacy, and knowing that the person you're reaching out to, that you're going to get paired with somebody who has a similar experience. How did you find people that you felt were capable to listen and give the person feedback who was either anxious, lonely, or stressed? Let's just take those three things.
So that's a great question. So first off, when you download the app and you decide to have a conversation with someone, you pick the filter in which you want to do. So it could be anything from LGBTQ, new mom, parenthood, work, etc. So you get matched with someone, and only the people that have that lived experience will be available for you. Right? Those people are people who decide that they want to be available for other people. And they're everyone from anyone, right? I mean, they go through training, but anyone can be a listener as long as you go through training and you're part of our training program. But also we have Masters of Social Work students that provide 20 hours a week because it's their last year of MSW school and a requirement that they have. And we have all sorts of internship programs, anything from an undergrad psych student, and this is worldwide. So we have programmatic ways to get people, and then I'm not a Kevin Costner fan, but that movie, If You Build It, They'll Come, or what's called Field of Dreams. And so I intuitively knew that there's we feel better primarily two ways, right? One is reaching out for support, and the other is giving support. So people who give support get as much benefit, if not more, out of it than people that are getting the support. And I've been in recovery now for 24 years. And the whole premise of, the sponsor-sponsee model, right? In order to keep it, you give it away. If you want to, be there for someone else, that's how you aid in your own recovery. So if people want to feel self-esteem, you do esteemable acts. One of the most esteemable act you can do is to be there for someone else. You give your time, you're not giving your money if money is an issue for you. And there's an equality there. And therefore people can sort of relate to each other as equals. And it's not like someone fixing you, right? It's not like you're the problem to be solved. You're a human with human needs, desires, wants, life experiences, issues. You hate your mother, your boss, all of the various things that we all go through on a daily basis.
So let's go back to who you were. You don't have to go back to like the day you were born, but how you grew up. I know you talk a lot about being lonely, and I think this is what's led you to this place, but you're, a successful restaurant owner, several restaurants, but how did you get to this place? Let's start from how it started to where you are now.
So I got to it through a very long, arduous, and somewhat painful journey. So when I was young, I knew that I was gay, and I knew that it was inherently something I couldn't share with people.
How young did you realize this?
8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay.
And so from an outward perspective, I mimicked what I thought straight people wear, act like, talk like, or interested in. So from a very early
that's
age,
just killing me.
Yeah, and so I have this vision of myself as living like in a box within a box. So it's very hard to be connected with people when you're not being there for people, when they're not seeing who you are, and it creates a lot of loneliness and disconnection. So I dealt with that in two different ways. The healthy way was yoga and meditation, right? Which is still a big part of my life. But even with that, there's this concept called spiritual materialism. So I can drop down in meditation and I would feel better than other people. Like I'm somehow superior because I can meditate. I can sit on a cushion for an hour and right. So that separated me from people as good as it is. And the other part was drugs and alcohol, which we all know that story. The silver lining is I got sober and clean, and I really understood through AA, frankly, like what it's like to be in connection with other people and how to do it. So that was sort of my path.
Quick question. Did you feel like you had to hit rock bottom? Because you were dealing with trying to be straight when you were gay, living in that box where you feel like you weren't really communicating it. So you were isolating yourself from other people because you knew that like you weren't the same as them. And then drugs and alcohol. Was that the last part of finally starting to live in, let's just call it, your authentic self?
It's a great question. And for me, it's sort of like, you ever see like a bunch of electrical wires all sort of smashed together and tangled, and it's really hard to understand how to untangle them. So it's hard for me to be really linear about sort of the progression.
I understand.
But I will say that from the time that I entered recovery, from the time that I thought I could, and it's a very slow process, to the time that I fully came out, that there was full integration between every aspect of my life, was about 25 years, right? So I was getting better, but it really took me until I sold my restaurant chain, Atomic Wings, and I decided to do something with my life that had meaning, was authentic to who I was, that could actually take all of my experiences and be there for other people. I was very fortunate. I made a nice living. I sold my company. So I don't know if any of you know about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it's like food, security, shelter, safety. But the top part is sort of what's called self-actualization, right? Which I could interpret it as being authentic. Right? Because when you're really at that space, you can be authentic. And many of us, it's hard to be authentic anyway. So that's when I really decided that the only way to do something really meaningful was to do something about my sort of historic problem of loneliness and isolation. The only way I'm going to be able to have a business bringing people together is if I'm completely myself. And so and that's when I really became fully integrated. And every day it's like you sort of come out in different ways. So you're never done, right? Correct. Like, I have I'm now living in Louisiana post-COVID. It's a long story, but anyway, I go to this barber, and my husband and my son go to this barber. But he didn't know up until like 2 months ago that there was any connection between the three of us, right? But then my son was getting his haircut and he was talking about us, and then Troy, the barber, put it all together. Oh, wow. I had a cordial relationship with Troy, but we didn't have, it was a cordial relationship. I showed up yesterday to get a haircut. He's talking his ear off. He's telling about the what's going on with his son. He's asking about Daniel and my husband, and all these different things. So him finding out who I really was enabled him to open up to me in a way that created a real relationship. So it's a constant evolution, I think,
I absolutely agree with you with the evolution. And that's, when at the beginning of the show, I talk about that, like we're always evolving. We are always changing. So that education to understand who we are, that's self-actualization, and is empowering, because as we become more of ourselves, and it's never easy to really figure out who we are, but as we become more and more comfortable with who we are and proud of who we are, not isolating and feeling lonely, that's when we really start feeling like more fulfilled. And I think fulfillment is so important in our lives. And, I have 2 daughters. They're 29 and 33. And look, the divorce wasn't easy, but again, it was a long time ago. But, you know, everybody goes through different things. And I always say to them, smile, breathe, and be grateful for what you have right now. And I know that sounds so simple. And I know they're rolling their eyes when they get that text from me. But I mean, a simple smile, it just makes you go, okay, life's not so tough right now. But it, you know, I can relate to feeling isolated because I was a little different, you know, even as a suburban housewife. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like I couldn't be who I was. I felt like it was at the point where I couldn't breathe anymore in my marriage. So that's why I had to leave and figure out at the age of 42, who is Jody? Who does Jody want to be? Obviously, as a parent, you understand your children come first and foremost, a mother first. And that's important to be that person to your children, for them to model, or at least see who mom really is or who dad really is, because we don't want to lie to our kids about who we are. We want them to embrace who they truly are. So I understand that. I think everybody, whether you're gay or you're not, or you're bi, or whatever you are, whatever your sexuality is, doesn't even have anything to do with it, but whatever your status is in life, you need to really be true to who you are, because
yeah,
that's how we're happy.
I think most of us, for whatever reason, have some core shame, and that shame holds us back from being who we are, which in and of itself is bad because it hurts us. What I really learned is that when I am myself, I'm allowing other people, they're happier around me, right? Because like if I'm having a conversation, if Jody, like Jody and I are talking, right? And I feel like she's holding back something, and I might not even know it. I may just feel it. I may not even like consciously know it, but it's gonna reflect how I respond back to Jody and how safe I feel with Jody, right? So it's really so, and that will strengthen a relationship with Jody, that I can potentially bring new people into my life, which makes our lives healthier and happier. Right. So it's a whole cycle. And I just want to please let everyone know that if you're at this space right now where you feel a lot of shame and you're not feeling authentic and you're feeling like you'll never get there, it took me a very, very long time. I didn't think I'll ever get there. I remember having a friend telling me I'm going to die old and alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side. And I thought to myself, I get to have a one-bedroom, right? And my life is so much more full and rich now. But it's hard to see it when you don't see it. It's like if you're in physical pain, you have something, you threw your back out. It's hard to remember what it's like to not have a back pain. And then when you don't have the back pain, you forget how bad it was to have the back pain. So I've been through it. It's a rough road, but you will get there, and we all have our own journey. So I just want to throw that out there, because it's sort of like when someone says feel better. Well, it's like, oh, like, it makes you feel worse because you can't just feel better. So I want to make sure I'm not throwing platitudes around, because it is a journey. It is a process. It's two steps forward, one step back. And you don't always know you're there until you look back.
It's painful. It's painful, but you've got to go through the struggle to see the strength, right?
Yep.
So when you owned a lot of restaurants, right? Called Atomic Wings.
A restaurant chain called Atomic Wings. We had 32 locations when I sold it, and apparently they're doing really well now. I've been reading about it lately. So
that's nice, amazing. So what was your mental state while you were building this empire?
Well, it was an empire, bifurcated, right? So I've always lived my life compartmentalized, right?
Me too.
So,
I get it.
So it was like I got along with people that worked at the restaurants. I was cordial, they were cordial, but I wasn't not out, but I wasn't out, if that makes any sense, right? So it felt really a bit distanced, right? Now there's appropriateness in terms of work, in terms of how you show up at work, you need to have boundaries, etc. But there was a fundamental slight disconnect between how people saw me, how I saw myself, and what I was willing to share and not share. Right. So It was a great experience overall, but I knew that I needed, for my personal growth and for me to really be in connection with people, I had to get past the sort of compartmentalizing my different parts or acting different ways to different types of people.
So when you left that part of your life, and was it more for your mental well-being, or you were just done? We don't need to get deep into that, but I didn't.
I was
Curious.
done. I mean,
Okay.
I was literally done. I remember, I was opening a restaurant. I was a franchisor at the time in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I remember thinking, and your job as a franchisor is you're the cheerleader, right? Like you're the person who, people are buying into.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was saying to myself, I could care less if there's another chicken wing restaurant in the world. I was like, I can't believe I have to be here for this when I really it had no meaning anymore. I knew then I had to leave. And I also knew at that point that my next chapter, I had to really bring it all together, confront some fears, and just be myself, but really be myself. And, I always say all you need is 20 seconds of courage, right? Because if you have that 20 seconds to say what you want to say, then everything can shift for you. And most of us get stuck and we can't summon up that 20 seconds of courage, which can lead to decades of unhappiness.
You're familiar with Mel Robbins, right?
Sure.
So she has this book, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And so I do that to myself a lot because I am a scaredy cat, not as much as I used to be, because it is, and big risks come with big rewards, but there's always consequences to our actions, right?
Sure.
So, but once you knew that, you're like, I don't give a shit if there's another chicken wing sold ever. You're like, I'm so out of here. And, I know other people that have been in businesses and they say the same thing. I don't care anymore. I just don't care. Let me sell it. Let me move on. And how are you doing during that time? Were you struggling? Once you sold it and you were out of it, was it like, what do I do now? Or you spoke about, once I got over the fear, what was the fear at that time?
So there was a transitionary period so I have another company, which I'm getting out of because I'm just getting too busy. That was my transition company from Atomic Wings into HearMe. And that's called Cuddlist, Cuddlast, cuddlist.com. And it's a professional cuddling platform. So going back to my loneliness and disconnection, I was thinking, what's the quickest way to make a connection? And if you look at, a baby is born, you hold them in all sort of important moments in life. If you're lucky enough, you're getting hugged, you're giving a hug, there's some kind of physical touch. We tend to think of touch as being sexualized, but if you really think about your life and that, when you hug your mother, your grandmother, you tap a coworker, you fist bump, whatever it is that you do, those are not sexualized actions. And yet they're really important to make us feel better. So I started a business training people to be professional cuddlers.
You're amazing.
For people that need it. And it's been amazing. It's been around for 6 years now. And, we work with trauma survivors and severely obese people and people who are disabled. And it's been incredibly gratifying. So I was beginning that process. So that was sort of my real process out. And I started that while I still had one foot in the door with Atomic Wings. So it wasn't like a complete break. It was sort of I was getting divorced as I was starting something new.
Mm-hmm. And you were leaning into the whole mental wellness based on
Absolutely.
what you've gone through, that you didn't want people suffering through the same thing. And did people think it was a little weird to
oh my God,
hire
I'm a Jew from New York. What are you doing? People couldn't believe it. And for me, when I started selling chicken, people were doubting it. You can't have a business just selling chicken. So I don't know if it's healthy or not, but I started to get off on that. Because then it's I have to prove something, right? That's my sort of competitive nature. It's yes, I can, and watch me, right? And so
wait, are you a Capricorn?
No, I'm a Libra.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead.
This probably isn't Libra energy, but I am competitive in that regard. And it's don't tell me I can't do something. And you're gonna make me do it. That's why. So I got a lot of shit for it, for lack of better words. People were dogging me and you're crazy and what are you doing? And it's ridiculous and all of this stuff. And I'd be, okay, just watch.
Watch.
You know, it turns out that I can show you the testimonials that come in. It's the most beautiful thing on earth. It's like, if you're someone who, you know, a lot of us, we're lucky enough, you take touch for granted because you have it. But imagine you don't, right? And a lot of reporters, we had a lot of press on, a lot of reporters are generally in their 20s and they're in the dating world, right? And I'd say, wait till you're divorced, you gain 200 pounds, you have diabetes, or, you know, a loved one died. You know, it's like, you can't imagine what you can't imagine, right? But there's a lot of people out there, and I knew I had a good idea. So I was living in Manhattan at the time, and I had a lot of women friends who were probably in their 50s, right? And when I was explaining this to them, and that were sort of single, right? And like perpetually single.
Yeah.
When I was explaining it, I would see them, they'd start out like really distant, and then they'd start to melt. And then I'd sort of ask, can I put my arm on your back, whatever. They would start to cry because it made them realize how much is missing in their own life. And that experience is universal for people, unfortunately. So I wanted to do something about that. I thought the quickest way to sort of shift that incredible loneliness was to have an experience with another person that was close and honest.
Right. And everybody, I don't know why this question just popped into my head. Do they have to be 18 and over?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted for everything. Yeah. Okay. You know, when I was thinking, you have a son, I have daughters, and, you know, if you don't touch them, if you don't hug them, if you don't hold them, or your significant other, there's no hugs. I say to my husband all the time, just hug me. Just hug me. He's a foot taller than me. And I'm just like, just hug me. And it's like, that's where I feel safe.
Yeah. There's tons of evidence and studies that prove that, you know, the amount of healthy touch we get in our life, which is different from unhealthy touch, but the amount of healthy touch that we life helps us in every aspect of our life, every, you know, psychosocial, physical, spiritual, mental. It's really important.
That feel, that touch. So from there, so that company's still around. That was your transition. And then you went into
HearMe.
You started HearMe because.
So what happened was I knew I knew there was something there. And I hired a research firm to do a deep dive into who, what, and why. Why are people paying $100 or $80 an hour? What are they really looking for? And so we did deep research, and people want to be seen, heard, and validated and feel more human, right? And the depths of what people hiring a professional cuddler shows you the depth of loneliness, because I think it's shifting, but it was fairly shameful for a lot of people. Like, my life is so bad, I'm so lonely, I have to hire someone to hug me. So
I would feel that way. Yeah.
Shifting, right? Yeah. It's been shifting, but it was there. And so, and then people started to call up and they'd say, well, I don't have $100. I'm not near any one of your practitioners. I just want to talk to someone. So then I sort of was like, okay, this is something that I can really do at scale, support many, many people.
Yeah.
It's not just for quote, wealthier people that have $100 an hour, and geographically we can serve everyone in the world. We can bring more people into it. So that was sort of the genesis.
Right. It's like going into the digital world with the feel, the touch, even though there's not somebody there right with you. It's brilliant. It is so brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Adam Lippin. And so stay with us. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm Jody Harrison Bauer, and I'm here with Adam Lippin. And we are talking about how important it is to take care of your mental health, to that mental well-being is just as important as taking care of your body. And so welcome back, Adam. Hi.
Thank you.
I've been in the fitness industry for over 33 years. I've been working out for 40 years. And, back then nobody was talking about mental well-being, as we touched upon at the beginning of the show. Could I say how old you are?
Sure.
Okay, so you're going to be 59. So you're 58 and I'm 61. So you're going to be 59. I'm going to be 62. So we grew up in the same era, and people didn't talk about it. People took a lot of drugs. I know my mom had her her little cabinet in the kitchen where she took her Valium, and never went to therapy ever until she was probably in her 50s. And it did change her life. It really did. But there was just such a stigma attached to feeling ashamed. Nobody talked about being lonely. Nobody talked about being seen or being heard. And growing up knowing that you were gay at 7, 8, or 9 years old, you didn't feel comfortable even sharing this with your parents. I'm curious as to when you finally told them.
Oh, I was 19.
And why did you tell them at 19? Were you off at school? Were you on your own?
Yeah, this happened. My older sister Lori had an apartment on 92nd in York, and she traveled a lot for work. And so this was my freshman or sophomore year, coming home from college. Mm-hmm. And I lived in her apartment, but I worked with my mom. She was a teacher at a special ed school in Pleasantville. And I just told them, I felt like I needed to, right? It was an important thing to do. And I would see my mom at work. So we would sort of like, we sort of worked through it. But my dad, I sort of told them, it was like late at night and I left to go back to the city. And a few days, I saw him like a week later, and he said, "You can't come home and tell me you're gay and move to the city. For all I know, you could be like the queen of the Ramrod," which was like a bar in the West Village. So I'm like, fuck you, man. You don't know anything. So, right. So that's how it happened. And, we sort of worked it through.
Well, my sister didn't come out until she was almost 40.
Wow.
And she wanted me to tell my parents. And I said, no, that's on you. You have to do that. So, and she's been married, I think, for 6 or 7 years now, to a woman she met almost 20 years ago. So in like a chat room, like, remember, like, what was it? Whatever those things were. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the people that you hired, we've been talking about your HearMe app. And that came from Cuddlist, knowing that people needed a human touch. People needed to be heard, be seen, and they needed that touch.
Yeah.
If they couldn't get near somebody who could cuddle them or afford that. So you realized there was a huge need.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So part of what people the touch is important, and they were getting that touch, but they wanted to feel more human. They wanted to feel more connected. They felt totally disconnected. And I wanted to give people an opportunity to get things off their chest, right? When everything, because my life, so much was bottled up, right? And I spent so much of my energy thinking of, if I could only talk to someone about this, and then try to figure out who I could talk to, and then psych myself out why I can't. Right.
Right.
So I wanted to create a seamless, stigma-free, immediate access experience, and technology allowed us to do it. Right. So that was sort of the genesis behind it. So yes, there's not that physical touch, but there's the emotional support. There's the just sharing, the venting, all of that is really important. And so that's what we provide. And when you can provide it again with someone that you feel psychologically safe with, that's very, very powerful. And it's what most of us sort of need. So even if you have clinical needs, even if you have a therapist, you're lucky enough, or a psychiatrist, for whatever particular, whatever you're dealing with, you still have that desire from time to time to get things off your chest, and you don't want to wait till next Thursday at 4 p.m. Right? You're sitting with it now. So what if you can get it off your chest now? How good will you feel? And get on with your day, the flow of your life, just to say, whatever it is.
And it's available 24/7.
Yeah, 24/7. So for example, college students, relationships are tough, and it may sound like to an outsider, like, yeah, sure. But if you're going through, you're a 21-year-old woman or guy and whoever, and you're in it, to be able to get it out is really helpful, because you know what? Your friends are tired of listening to you. You can't tell your mom or whatever. So like having a neutral person that is there to support you, to be there for you, is really impactful and very, very powerful.
How far can the people taking the calls give advice? Do you have boundaries as to what?
Yes, so we don't give advice. Okay. What we can do is ask so let's say you're telling me about infertility, let's say, right?
Oh
I would
yeah,
never,
that's
so
really
we
something I
wouldn't,
would call
assuming I was
about.
the woman, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say you need to do this. I would say, would you like to hear my experience and what I went through?
Oh,
And then if they say yes, I could share a bit of my journey, what works for me or what didn't work for me. But you always have to, the whole thing with Cuddlist and HearMe is about empowering people. When someone tells you what to do, I know, I'm sure you do things you're not supposed to do. Everyone can tell you not to do that till the cows come home, but it's not until you make the decision not to do it.
correct.
And so I don't think telling people what to do works in general. I think it's almost like when someone gives you unsolicited advice, it's almost their way of saying, I'm kind of done listening to you. I've had enough, right? And I'm not here enough for you. And that can create some tension there. So we don't give advice. We share, if given permission, something that we've done. And if someone has really, issues that are way beyond what we do, we have a lot of resources that we can give out for all sorts of issues, up to and including like a suicide prevention hotline or handoff. But in general, we're subclinical, meaning we're not designed to solve clinical issues, but evidence shows the more you get things off your chest subclinically, potentially less clinical needs you will actually have.
That's interesting. How long, is there a limit for the call?
So we empower our listeners to make decisions that are right for them.
Okay.
So you're not there to be beat up or punched. You're not there to be abused, right? So as long as the listener is clear with what their boundaries are, some listeners like 20 minutes, I'm done. I can't do more than that. Other people will stay on for hours, but it's the listener has to be empowered to make those choices that are right for themselves. And we're really I think boundaries are critically important, and I think clear boundaries are really important.
Very.
So if the listener has a particular time frame in mind, hey, I'm here for you for 25 minutes or 30 minutes, or I'm here as long as you want. But as long as a listener, because if there's a disconnection and because then someone starts to feel taken advantage of, right. And if you feel taken advantage of, you're not going to be fully present. So it's all about the conditions to be fully present, and that can look very different for many different people.
You know what I love what you're saying is that it's clear that you've gone through this journey yourself, because you understand it so well. And I'm so grateful to have been introduced to you so you can share this information to the listeners, because whether it's them or somebody they love or care for, they can share this. So thank you for, wanting to get this out into the world, literally the world now, so global. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. It makes me feel really, really good. And I will say I am incredibly proud of myself. And it's really, I feel very blessed, and there's sort of something magical about, I think, what we've created, because we bring in so many people. There's an ever abundance, right, of people who can be there for other people. And in order, assuming we're never going to solve a way out of this mental health crisis. And in fact, loneliness, according to Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, is the #1 health crisis facing our country. It's worse than obesity and worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is one of the leading indicators of negative outcomes if you don't have it, right? One of the primary indicators across a long study, 60 years with people that went to Harvard, Cigna Health, et cetera, is sort of the amount of people that you have in your life to support you when you're going through something, right? Yeah. So 61% of Americans and 79% of Americans between 18 and 22 say they don't have anyone. And if that's one of the major social determinants of health, something has to give. We're never going to really take mental health seriously unless we fix that social equation. So HearMe can provide instant access for people who don't have that access, because we know the negative outcomes that come. There's no shame in it. All of us at different times are lonely, disconnected, don't feel like we can talk to someone. So HearMe is here for you for that those times in your life. It's just human nature.
Yeah, I read somewhere, I have it written down here, that over 44 million Americans have mental health conditions. And there's, like we said at the beginning, there's still a stigma attached to it. So hopefully they get on an app, your app, and they don't feel stigmatized, and they feel stronger and empowered, and maybe they need to take it to the next level, but that's where they could get possibly started, right?
It's a start for sure. You practice. It's a practice. Learning how to communicate is a practice. You're not a natural, some people maybe are natural orators. If you did my little psychological test, I'm an introvert. I'm comfortable sort of like, being alone. It's like my go-to place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this takes work, and it takes an expensive energy.
It does. It does. So what do you do to stay mentally fit?
So I do meditate every morning I set my alarm for 10 minutes. So I do have a sitting practice, and then I'll do some yoga stretches for about 5 minutes or so. I love riding my bike. I'm an outdoor person. So basically I try to ride my bike a lot, and I go to the gym, and I do lift weights, but not like crazy, because I don't want to get hurt. And that's a part of, so yoga, going to the gym, bike riding. I love to hike whenever I get a chance. I like being physical, and I'm incredibly like ADHD, and I'm literally at ADHD. So I just naturally move around a lot. And I naturally, like, if I'm just standing in line, I stretch, or I do a squat. Like people think my son is so embarrassed, but I can't help it.
How old is he?
He's 18.
Oh, he's 18. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's they do get embarrassed still at 18. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You got to keep moving. I'm the same way. I swear I probably have ADHD. I don't know. I find, and I want to ask you about this, the stillness. You get up, you set your alarm, you move, you breathe, you meditate, and that's your stillness. Are there other times where you have to pull it? How do you feel about that word stillness?
I love it. And what I do is I always check, because I practice yoga meditation for so long, I'm fairly consciously aware of my breathing and when I'm not breathing. So I'm always sort of bringing my attention back to my breath. And there's this concept called interoception or exteroception, and this notion that your body doesn't lie. So if you notice what you're noticing, right? If you notice what you're noticing, you can begin to just shift your breathing and energy around to sort of come into more of a content space, right? And the other thing I think is really important is life is stressful. Your day is going to have ups and downs. So the understanding that there will be hard times. So when there are hard times, you're not feeling great, you can say to yourself, Roger, it's like, well, of course, duh. That's just human nature. So I think a lot of people seem to get stuck because things are difficult, and they're like, why is everything difficult? Well, it's difficult because life is difficult. So if you sort of have that understanding, then when it happens, you have a little defense against it.
Right. People get surprised when it's difficult or it gets chaotic. It's called life. We heard that from our parents growing up. That's life, kiddo.
Right.
Deal with it. Deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it can be a little more sensibly, but I remember, with Atomic Wings, it'd be like 2 a.m, and a cashier would be complaining about how annoying a customer is. I'm like, it's 2 a.m. on a Thursday night.
Right.
On the Upper East Side, who do you think's ordering chicken wings? Of course they're annoying. It's like, that's just part of the job.
Right. So what's the next step with HearMe? Where are you now? Where are we taking it? What's going on?
So one of the things I'm so happy and proud of is we have a client called Ingenivis Health. And Ingenivis Health is essentially a nurse staffing agency. And so we support nurses, and we use retired nurses to be the supporters for existing nurses. They've been where they've been. They know what it's like being in an IC unit at 4 a.m.
Love it.
A lot of them are traveling nurses, so what it's like when you're not near any of your family. So that's really gratifying. So we're moving into this healthcare world because the most stressed people are healthcare providers, right? We all know during COVID, the difficulty.
I'm married to a doctor.
Okay. So the stress, right? I mean, I was just listening to an AMA, American Medical Association podcast with someone who created a peer network for doctors. I mean, the level of anxiety and stress and it's a hard life.
It's
right?
very stressful. And I think it always was, but I think with the way healthcare has changed, it's made things even harder for them, and doctors are working longer. Remember back in the days, doctors were retiring at 55. Yeah, that's not happening anymore.
No, it's really stressful. So I'm really, really happy that we have a sort of we seem to be able to support nurses and healthcare workers. So that's probably one of the bigger parts of our focus. I mean, ultimately it's moving into the world of insurance, et cetera. So we're looking to, we need to make money. We live in that kind of world. And I sort of had a nonprofit for 2 years without wanting to have a nonprofit. So we're working to sort of commercialize, selling primarily to, industries, companies, et cetera.
So it is free, but then it goes, there is a pay, there are different, I don't want to throw it out there.
So right now, anyone, anywhere can download the app. It's totally free. You get connected, right? We do have an enterprise product, which is not free, that we charge. We curate listeners. We use peer support specialists. We don't really have enough time to get into it, but we use a different type of listener, and we provide different analytic tools, anonymized, of course, back. So it's the same basic premise. It's just presented a little bit differently.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
What if you had to tell somebody what was the most important thing somebody would want to know about you, what would it be?
Know about me?
Yes. I know I didn't prepare you for this question.
No, I mean, well, I guess my question would be, why would I care? Would be the first question. If it's about me, right? Because that's sort of ego. In terms of what I want to accomplish and what I'd like to contribute, I think what I'm doing now is what I want to be doing and I want to be contributing. I think if you're lucky enough to find what it is that calls you and you can do it, then that's really everything. And so right now I feel like I'm on earth doing what I'm meant to be doing. It's a wonderful feeling. And so in terms of what people think about me, I don't really care that much in terms of what I want to put out there.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I meant. I wanted to know what that you would want people to know about you. And so the big question is here now is, what does it mean to you to live a fearlessly authentic life?
It means total integration for me. And it means every day making a commitment to be honest, regardless of the consequences of that. And I think if you're clear, and then you can be honest in a way that is not aggressive or passive aggressive or ghostlighting, whatever that word is. It's just being honest. And I think when I'm totally honest with someone else, I'm essentially giving them permission to be totally honest with me, because that's the only way true communication or true connection happens. So if I'm not being fully myself, then basically I'm telling the other person, I don't trust you enough. I don't feel safe enough with you to let you be your full self, because you'll hold back because I'm holding back.
I'm feeling that so much in my heart right now. It's like comes really from the heart. So thank you for that.
And when we try to protect people, we're so I think so for me, it's about sort of understanding my right place, like to be right size, they say in the program, right? So you're not out here, you're not in here, but you're right size. You own yourself, you own the words, the deeds, the actions, and you accept the consequences from that. And whatever someone else is on someone else.
Absolutely. I love that answer. I need to steal that from you. That was really beautiful. How can people get in touch with you or HearMe, or give us every place where you are so we can.
So Adam at HearMe.app, Adam at HearMe.app, or Adam Lippin on LinkedIn. I'm not big on other socials, but HearMe has an Instagram. I think it's HearMe_app. And I believe we have a LinkedIn and Facebook as well. But the best way to reach me is just my name, Adam Lippin at LinkedIn, or you can email me.
Okay.
That's wonderful. How I tend to communicate best.
No, I love that. Adam Lippin with 2 P's. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been a joy, and I've learned so much, and you've empowered so many people that are listening, including myself. That thank you for creating this app and what you're doing. It's a really beautiful thing, and we need more people in the world like you. So thank you so much.
And back at you. I think we have a mutual admiration society thing going on. I think you're wonderful. And yeah, I think it's great. So thank you for allowing me to be on and sharing. And I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And I hope people that are listening enjoyed it as well. So,
me too. Me too. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you all for listening today and for joining us. And until we meet next week, have a fearlessly authentic week. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.